L.P. O'Neill of Avon talks about his father and mother's seafaring careers and about their boats. Mr. O'Neill was interviewed in 2004 by Barbara Garrity Blake for the Cape Hatteras National Seashore Ethnohistory Project. The Outer Banks Community Foundation provided funds to digitize the original recording.
Him and my mother used to run these, they call them ore barges or whatever. They ran ore from either Baltimore or Norfolk. And they had a tug that towed this barge. It was just like a big house, you know. And my father was captain on it after he got out of the Navy. And, after he got out of the Navy, he come home and married my mother in 1921. And she went to sea with him. And his father went as a helper, too. His name was George Howard, my grandfather.
She went to sea with him?
Yeah.
Isn't that unusual?
No, not in them days. And my uncle, his brother, done the same thing. He carried his wife with him, too, and boys.
And how many days at a time would they be out there?
Well, whatever it was, how long it took to tow them up there. It took a long time, maybe 6, 8 days to go to Bangor, Maine.
Bangor, Maine is where they went?
Yeah.
Now, what was your mother's name?
Ida.
Ida?
Ida Mae O'Neill.
And was she from Avon, too?
Yes, sir. She was born right here at Avon.
So as a young woman, there she is working on this barge with your father.
Yeah, she cooked. They had a crew with her, about 6 or 7, besides my father and his father.
Wow.
And she cooked. She got paid. My grandfather, he got paid. There was nothing right here. And he saved up enough money, and after that, and my mother wanted to move home with Teresa,
Who was Teresa?
my sister.
Okay, was that the oldest daughter?
Yeah, she was older. She's 10 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
She was 10 years. She was born in 24, and I was born in 34.
Wow. And so as a baby, she was carried out on this barge?
Yes, yeah. My mother come home in December, and she was born in January, and in June she went to sea when went back to sea. 3 years later, when it was all over with, my father come down here and he bought the Missouri off this Mr. Charlie Williams, Mr. Charlie Williams was the first legislature from North Carolina from this island.
Really?
He had the post office down here on the shore. It took 5 days to get to Raleigh.
Huh.
He'd have to sail from here to Swan Quarter.
But now, what boat did your father buy from Charlie Williams?
The Missouri, that was her name.
And that was the one that was built in
Smyrna, North Carolina.
North Carolina.
Yeah. 1901.
1901.
Yeah, 56 feet and had a 19-foot beam. And my father ran freight. He had a Coca-Cola franchise. In other words, he had the only Cokes down here on the island. And
that was probably when Coke first started being put on the market?
Well, they called them dopes back in them days. You know,
they call them what?
Dopes.
Dopes?
Coca-Cola, yeah. You know, Coca-Cola had cocaine in it up till 1937.
Oh my gosh.
You didn't know that?
I did know that.
Did
I
you?
did know that, but I didn't know they called them dopes.
Yeah, well, they called them dopes here, sure. We used to have a great big garage out there, like a warehouse, and it was always stacked up full of drinks and things like that, you know. He'd haul freight, tombstones, lumber, whatever anybody wanted, he'd haul it.
Mm-hmm. And he had would he go regularly?
Once a week. Well, I'll tell you how much stuff cost. I got a book upstairs. This fella from Frisco, right? He used to have a store named Eddie Williams.
Right.
This is just for instance. And my father bought a case of tomatoes down. It was either 24 or 48. I don't know what it was. Anyhow, the whole case of tomatoes cost $1.33, and he charged 10-cent freight from Elizabeth City and delivered it to Frisco. Well, they called it Trent in them days. And
how did he make any money?
Oh, the most money he ever made was he had government contracts during the Depression, hauling coal to these
really?
Coast Guard stations and stuff.
Mm-hmm. So what was his actual route from where to where?
Well, he'd leave here and go to Elizabeth City to pick up freight.
Okay.
And where he'd go, you know, he'd stop in Rodanthe.
Okay.
He'd go into Rodanthe, he'd drop off stuff. But the stuff that, unless he carried a lot of lumber, he'd go into Buxton or Hatteras, you know. Now, he never put engines in that boat until 1939.
Really? It was all sail until then?
All sail until 1939.
And then he converted it over? And
Well, it didn't look any different, except that living quarters in the stern, you know, in the back where the little table was.
Right.
That was all out, and they put 2 engines down there.
And what kind of engines did they put in there?
2 straight 8 Buicks.
Buicks?
Buick engines, yeah.
You didn't have to crank them, did you?
I don't know if you did or not, tell you the truth, but I remember folks around here used to crank engines with a crank.
Right.
With their feet.
With their feet?
Yeah, they turn the key off and turn the engine over and get the crank up. Then they turn the key on and push the crank down. It was a dangerous thing. My father, he got slammed against the side of the engine cabin many a time.
By what?
The crank,
Oh,
with the engine to kick back in them days.
Oh, no.
He had a gouge right through his nose, like that's where this was a different type boat. Threw him against the side, inside the cabin.
Wow.
You know, they was used to hard work. I'm telling you, that little fella, the only thing that ever I felt bad about, and I think it hurt his feelings, he told me to carry a piece of line up and put it through the block. That was on the Missouri when I was just a little boy, 5 or 6. I should have been, I'd swim all my life, I should have been tough enough. I couldn't get up that mast.
Uh-huh.
He took his shoes off, got barefooted, put the line in his mouth. He went up that mast just like a monkey.
Oh, did he?
Reeved it through the block and come back down.
And how tall was he?
5'5". He had arms that big around.
What did people call him?
Lauren.
They call him Lauren.
They call me LP.
LP.
For Lauren Pierce.
So they would say, here comes Lauren in the freight boat. And where did he keep the boat tied up?
Right
here?
off the shore down
Right
there.
here?
Yeah, right here. Or up to the Mill Creek. You know where the creek is up north of Avon?
Mm-hmm, yep.
Okay, where the restaurants and stuff is?
Right.
Right outside of it is an island out there called Big Island. We used to
Right.
anchor it back there.
Okay, and so he would haul anything.
Anything. If
Coats?
you wanted to build a house, he'd go over to Outfall Canal and up Alligator River and all them areas up there and get a load of lumber.
And bring it back here.
Yeah.
And would he deliver it as far down as Ocracoke?
I have no idea. I've
Yeah.
never heard him say he ever went to Ocracoke, but more likely he did.
Right.
But see, they had these boats to Hatters, too, that run from Hatters to Swan Quarter.
Oh, that's true, yeah. There were several freight boats, weren't there?
Yeah, they was, yeah.
Did he ever carry people?
Yes, uh-huh. Yeah, he did. He always carried people going north and coming back.
Did he charge them?
No.
He didn't?
Never charged a nickel.
He
No.
just let them ride.
Yes, let them ride. Going up, we'd have beef hash and corn fritters going up, and coming back, we'd have the same thing as beef hash. Now, this is the watery kind, like with gravy.
Right.
And coming back, they'd put they put string beans and corn in it, so it was more like a soup, and still have cornbread. We go up. Here's what they usually did. It took one day going up, and then they'd load
To Elizabeth City.
Load, and they'd tie up in Elizabeth City and load. They'd work it late at night to get her loaded, and then the next morning, if everything was right. And we had a little donkey, but he had a little donkey boat on there with a little one-cylinder engine in it.
Right.
That was before the engines were put in. And a lot of times they tow it downriver till we got to the turning buoy outside Elizabeth City, past the Tank River.
Mm-hmm.
Till you got the turning buoy, and then you'd hoist the little boat up on the stern, and then you'd set the sails and sail down. Man, it was, for a kid my age, it was out of this world. You don't know how I dream about them. Every Christmas, my father had another boat. We had a cabin boat that we used to go over to Long Shoal. You know where Long Shoal is? It's after Stumpy Point, right before you get to Englehart.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Long Shoal River. And my father used to take me over to hunting every Christmas when I was a boy. We'd anchor back at the island. He'd cook, Oh, God, he could make the best biscuits you ever tasted.
Aw, that's...
And he'd roast black ducks and stuff in there. We'd have oyster fritters.
Were
And,
you his only son?
yeah, uh-huh. My sister was just like me. She was raised just like I was.
She would want to go too?
Oh, God, yes. You couldn't keep her out.
And so when he went to Elizabeth City, then he'd come back the next day?
If he could. Most time he did. It's according to, if everything was ready, he'd probably come back the next day. But, sometimes
Did it ever depend on the tides and winds and stuff?
No, never did. Not with this boat. Not with the Missouri he did. But with the Duncan he did. With the Duncan, when he come down, he'd have to anchor down here by the Cape Channel until the tide got up.
What was the Duncan? Another freight boat?
She was a bug eye, yeah.
Oh, that was the bug eye.
Yeah, she was a freight boat, yeah.
Okay.
But she drawed a lot of water.
And where did he get the Duncan?
I have no idea. I've asked 40 people. Nobody knows where he got it.
And where are these boats now?
The Duncan is right out here. The Worms got her, and she wasn't worth fixing, so they towed her out to the edge of the channel,
Right.
poured gas inside of her, and set her on fire, and she
Oh.
burnt and sunk out there. Now, I
Right.
saw it with my fish finder.
Oh, Oh, really?
A friend of mine, yeah, we went looking for it. We saw that little rib sticking up out of the sand.
Wow, must be pretty deep where they sunk
Yeah,
it.
it was. It was 9, 10 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So he had that boat, and we had that one that called the LP Junior. I told you he bought these two. He bought this boat and the LP Junior from Bradford. This guy, this commercial hunter. After he died, my father, he was offered to buy the house, land, and the two boats for $1,200. He only had $400, so he bought the boats. One was the boat that they used to live on. They go out and carry hunters out in, you know, was called the Brant. She was 30 feet long. She was a motorboat. Had a 3-cylinder Lathrop in it. And that's the one that throwed my father against the side of the cabin. And they used to go out and hunt. They had a stove in there. Had a wood stove, you know.
Did your father take them hunting too?
Yeah, he did. That's what he did. He worked for Bradford. He used to take people out, yeah.
And who is Bradford?
He was a New York industrialist. They still got him up there. They're very, very rich people.
And he had a place down here?
Yeah, he got a club down here. Built a nice club here, yeah.
Oh, I heard about that. It was to the north here?
Right up to the north down that road. It's called, see, what's the name of that road? McMullen Road. McMullen was an attorney, the district attorney for the state of North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
He bought this property off of Bradford.
And Bradford was the last name, Mr. Bradford?
Bradford. John Bradford was his name, yeah. He's the one that owned all this stuff.
And did your father do that while he was doing the freight boat or
No,
afterwards?
no, he did that. He did that before until he got the freight boat.
So you must have grown up really knowing how to handle boats.
I did all my life. All my life I've been in it. That's
And you can sail.
Yeah, well, I can sail. Yeah, I've sailed. Man, that little boat up there, I loved it to death.
And did people, how'd they take care of those boats? How'd they keep them from, did they paint them
Yeah,
regularly? They haul them out?
copper paint, haul them out, put copper paint on them, you know. My father, that was just like a toy. I'm telling you, he loved that boat.
And how often would he haul that boat out?
All the time, about once a month. He'd haul it out and scrub the bottom with sand on a rag.
And that would get all the algae off?
Yeah, sure. Get it off, let it dry, you know. One little nick in it, and he'd have to paint it. My mother sat there. My mother was a very patient lady. In them days, I've heard certain people say that women were second-class citizens back in them days. No, they weren't second-class citizens. They was because they loved their family. You know, I went to church one time, and I heard this woman say that in Sunday school class. I got up and left. All I could see was my mother's red hands where she was washing me and my sister's clothes out there by hand on a washboard. My father used to send her to collect.
Collect the money?
Yes, sir.
How did she do that?
She didn't take no bull off of anybody. I'm telling you. He'd send her to collect the money from these stores up down the islands, you know.
And how would she get around?
One of his workers would carry her in a truck. My father had 2 4-ton Chevrolets. These only had single wheels. They didn't have double wheels because they won't pull in sand. They let the air way out of the tires, you know, so they flatten out like that. And he'd carry her around.